Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Soul Land 2 Peerless Tang Men based on novel. So let's start. The resting area of the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy, that can't be. A super energy gathering soul cannon. Shrek Academy has actually developed a super energy gathering soul cannon. But he's a four-ringed soul ancestor. Can he even use a soul tool like this? Ma Rulong was astonished. Teacher Ma furrowed his brows tightly and muttered to himself, "It seems like we've always been underestimating Shrek Academy's soul tool department. Their research capabilities aren't as weak as they seem on the surface." Right, the thing equipped on Hikaitu's shoulder was something that completely shouldn't have appeared within this competition. This soul tool was first developed in the Sun Moon Empire, and it was called the Super Energy Gathering Soul Cannon. It was also a soul engineer's singular most powerful weapon. The simple use of this super energy gathering soul cannon would drain almost all of a soul king's soul power. That was the only way to release most of its might. Hikaitu naturally didn't have the strength of a soul king, but the super energy gathering soul cannon he wielded wasn't actually a complete one. The core formation within it had been modified slightly, though it seemed identical to the original on the surface. Once he became a Class 5 soul engineer and modified it again, he would be able to release the strength of a proper super energy gathering soul cannon. Although it wasn't a complete one, the soul power within Hikaitu's body started to pour into the super energy gathering soul cannon at an astonishing rate. At this moment, the lightning-like bolt of yellow light was just about to arrive. However, Hikaitu wasn't finished with his energy charging yet. He simply couldn't move, nor could he dodge the attack that was coming towards him. On the other hand, Xuelang had crossed over 50 meters in his wild charge. He would enter his attacking range within one more breath of time. At this exact moment, the young, two-ringed girl stepped out, unbeknownst to Tang Xiaolei or Xuelang. A large, pitch-black cauldron appeared not far away from Hikaitu's body without any prior warning. The instant that yellow arrow of light was about to hit Hikaitu, the cauldron took the initiative to let out a rumble. Its enormous body obstructed the arrow at an angle, as though it had grown a pair of eyes. A dazzling burst of sparks and an ear-piercing boom erupted from the large cauldron, an astonishing gorge having been cut into its surface. After that, the yellow arrow of light was deflected slightly, practically scraping past Hikaitu's shoulder as it flew towards the protective barrier. A shrill whistle rang out. More astonishingly, a small hole had actually appeared on the protective barrier formed by 108 soul masters, causing it to ring with a weird sound. Although it was instantly repaired, that yellow arrow had completely disappeared. However, the hole had clearly existed. The penetrative power of Tang Xiaolei's arrows could be seen from that. What accurate judgment! Tang Xiaolei was slightly astonished as he looked at Xiao Xiao. He couldn't help but squint his eyes as he saw her flickering second soul ring, the purple glint in his eyes brightening up even more. Right, this had been Xiao Xiao's own ability to judge. Hui Yuhao definitely couldn't spend a large amount of his spiritual power to help them out, because of the third match he had to partake in. So this was all caused by Xiao Xiao herself. That was a wonderful feeling for her. Although her eyes couldn't keep up with the speed of Tang Xiaolei's arrow, she was able to instantaneously activate her cauldron sweep to forcefully change the direction of that arrow. However, Tang Xiaolei had already drawn his purple flower bow for the second time. His arrow was still yellow this time, but it gave off a completely different feeling. Earlier, he had used the swift speed arrow. However, his current arrow was filled with a crazy force of oppression. Xuelang had crossed another 10 or so meters at this moment, but his speed was still increasing. A mournful tune suddenly rang out. It was evidently somewhat sharp and piercing, but Tang Xiaolei and Xuelang felt their minds jolt when they heard it. At the same time, they slowed down for an instant. After Xuelang was slowed down for a moment, he didn't immediately speed up to close the final 20 meters that was separating the two parties. Instead, he angled his body downwards as though he was swallowing a man whole. This was coordination, the coordination between him and Tang Xiaolei. This was because Tang Xiaolei's second arrow had finally arrived at this moment. The sharp whistle coming from this arrow was much more intense than the previous one. Furthermore, it wasn't just a beam of light like the previous one, but a ball of light that was as large as a watermelon. If anyone present was able to clearly see the yellow arrow in flight, that person would immediately see that it was a crystal yellow arrow, which was rapidly rotating in mid-air. This was Tang Xiaolei's second soul skill, Destruction Arrow, a spiraling arrow. Its penetrative power wasn't as high as the previous arrow, but its destructive power far surpassed it. This was especially so due to the extremely astonishing explosive force that came along with it. Nobody would ever have thought that Xiao Xiao would actually abandon Hikaitu and rush out. No, she couldn't be considered to be abandoning him. Instead, she used her body to block Hikaitu and rushed towards Xuelang. The black cauldron that had previously appeared was now gone. 3 rays of black light shone from Xiao Xiao's body as she charged forward, forming a horn formation. Although she was a twin-souled soul master who possessed infinite potential, she was currently still a 2-ringed soul grandmaster. She was still extremely weak in front of Tang Xiaolei and Xuelang. However, she still decided to charge forward without turning back. Hikaitu's eyes instantly turned red. Before Xiao Xiao had rushed out, she softly whispered to him, "Senior brother He, I can only do this much. I'll depend on you for everything else." Hikaitu was the physically largest person among Shrek's 7 monsters, while Xiao Xiao was the smallest. One could imagine how he was feeling, seeing that a little girl was standing in front of him to face a soul king and a soul ancestor. At that exact instant, the image of the little girl he had never paid special attention to was now branded in the softest parts of his heart. He would never forget her resolute eyes when she looked at him and her small, tender cute face. Xiao Xiao. Hikaitu clenched his teeth, using all of his strength to release his soul power. His blood vessels suffered an intense blow due to the overly quick release of his soul power into the super energy-gathering soul cannon, and tiny beads of blood started to seep from the surface of his skin. His veins were completely revealed on his forehead, and it seemed as though his body could explode from his own soul power at any time. Xiao Xiao's small face looked somewhat chilly, but her eyes were filled with a raging will to fight. Even if she clearly knew that any of the 2 opponents in front of her could easily defeat her, or even pulverize her if they wished to, she still decided to charge forward without turning back. Shrek's glory didn't just belong to their seniors, it similarly belonged to her, to Hu Yuhao, and to Wang Dong. It belonged to the weakest trio as well. Right, the referee. The referee had already charged over, and he wasn't even 30 meters away from the area where both parties would collide. However, even a 7-ringed soul sage couldn't instantaneously teleport 30 meters. At this exact instant, Xiao Xiao's eyes lit up. An intense white light suddenly rose from her body, and her 2 yellow soul rings blossomed with beautiful light, as though they were burning. The 3 cauldrons in front of her merged together, then flew straight towards Xuelang. This was Xiao Xiao's most powerful attack, National Treasure, Cauldron's Quaking Tremble. Xuelang's movements were sluggish, to the extent that he was somewhat late when releasing his skill. An enormous might that completely surpassed his imaginations suddenly blossomed outwards, as the 3-lived soul-crush Cauldron's Quaking Tremble was completely focused on him. He was temporarily paralyzed. The instant that terrifying explosive force descended upon Xuelang, he unusually didn't feel any anger at all. While using all of his soul power to defend himself, he only felt admiration towards the courageous girl in front of him. Right, she had already done her best. A young girl, whose cultivation hadn't even reached that of a 3-ringed soul elder, had forcefully blocked a soul ancestor, and hurt him using the strength of his own companion by relying on her own strength. Moreover, she had simultaneously blocked the attack of a soul king. Who could ask her for more? A martial soul was the foundation of every single soul master. Xiao Xiao's entire body seemed to be struck by an enormous hammer in the instant the 3-lived soul-crush cauldron shattered. She wildly spat out a mouthful of fresh blood, and her advancing body fell straight to the ground with blood seeping from her 7 apertures. She had fallen completely into a deep coma. Hikaitu's eyes went red as he let out a mad roar. In an instant, a cloud of bloody mist erupted from his body. The charging process, which had originally needed 5 to 10 more seconds to complete, was actually completed instantly. The super energy charging soul cannon instantly turned into a white blaze, and an indescribable, yet terrifying feeling pervaded the entire tournament stage. The 108 soul masters in charge of maintaining the protective barrier subconsciously poured their soul power into the golden pillars in front of them, turning the protective barrier dark yellow. After the 3-lived soul crush cauldron shattered, Xiao Xiao fell straight to the ground with no signs of waking up. Tang Xiaolei's soul was stirred by the scene, but he was still a Soul King-ranked expert, and this match was just that important to Just Sky Academy. He adjusted his mental state in an instant, then raised the purple flower bow in his hands. Time no longer permitted him to hold back anymore. The danger he felt from Hikaitu's super energy-gathering soul cannon was simply too great. Tang Xiaolei's gaze changed in the next moment, and he was instantly terrified. He was originally absolutely confident in his own attack, but he now discovered that the target he had placed on Hikaitu had vanished following the distortion of space. In other words, the 3 strongest arrows he had released had lost their mark. Right, the 3 rays of purple light had suddenly split into 3 as they flew through the distorted space. As a result, they simultaneously split up and flew towards 3 directions, akin to that of a triangle. Moreover, Hikaitu was right in the middle of that triangle. After that, Tang Xiaolei saw the white blaze grow bigger and bigger as it approached him. The ball of light was only a foot or so wide, but he felt as though he couldn't breathe. His soul power was completely drained after releasing the 5 arrows, making it so that he had no strength to resist at all. He was originally hoping for his 3 arrows to interrupt Hikaitu's attack before defeating him, but who would have guessed that the latter's super energy-gathering soul cannon was able to twist the space around him. At this moment, the astonished referee finally played his assigned role. freewebnovel.com. Following a roar, 1 white, 2 yellow, 3 purple, and 1 black soul ring appeared. The 7-ringed referee then sped up explosively, his 7th soul ring flickering. Amidst a low roar, a mountain-like figure flew straight out and stood in front of Tang Xiaolei. This figure was actually an enormous elephant that was shrouded by a thick layer of armor. Soul rings seemed to faintly light up around the body of the enormous elephant as it formed a earthen yellow screen of light that fiercely collided with the super energy-gathering soul cannon. Person who had never seen the might of a super energy-gathering soul cannon would definitely not be able to imagine how terrifying it was. In the first place, a weapon like this should not have appeared on the tournament stage. This was because a super energy-gathering soul cannon simply took too long to charge up, while a tournament held among soul masters had an extremely quick tempo. Hikaitu had spared no costs, injured his own body and urged all of his soul power to reduce the charging time of the weapon by a half, but it still took so long to charge up. If this were an ordinary fight, he would have lost God knows how many times already. Although it had a long charging time, its might was similarly terrifying. It was equivalent to taking the soul power of a soul master within a certain area, and unceasingly compressing and condensing it using an enormous and complicated formation array, before focusing it in one point and releasing it using the mouth of the cannon. He was already somewhat desensitized to the violent bouts of pain overcoming him. Now, he was trying to look towards Xiao Xiao's direction from his fallen state. The incomparably quiet Xiao Xiao definitely couldn't hear any of the violent explosions that were coming from the outside world at this moment. Her face was very pale, and her thin lips were still tightly pursed together. As she furrowed her brows, faint traces of blood could be seen flowing from her 7 apertures. Not only did she look miserable, but she also gave off an indescribable sense of heartache. The current Xiao Xiao was just that cute in Hikaitu's eyes. The conversation that only the two had heard on the stage earlier was now resounding in his mind. Brother He, do you have any especially strong soul tools that aren't restricted? I have one, but it needs a very long time to charge up. Then, how about we stake it all? I can help you stall for some time. I can't guarantee that I'll be able to give you enough time, but I'll do my best. We're also students of Shrek Academy, so for the sake of Shrek's glory, we can't just easily forfeit. Our youth isn't an excuse. Xiao Xiao. But don't but me, brother He. If we don't use all of our strength to stake it all, we'll definitely regret it for our entire lives. If a girl like me isn't scared, don't tell me that you are. I'm naturally not scared, but I'm worried for you. There's no need to worry about me. I'm a member of Shrek's representative team, not just a little girl. Let's just do it this way. Right? It was this exact conversation that had sealed their strategy on the tournament stage, and also the path that the match would follow. At this moment, Hikaitu didn't even know whether he was feeling any regret in his heart. Struggling, he did his best to crawl over to Xiao Xiao. He bent his body, then used his wide back as a support to carry Xiao Xiao's body while enduring the falling gravel that came from the blown-up tournament stage. Little girl, I will never let you protect me in the future again. I should be the one who's protecting you. Hikaitu felt his mind go dizzy. He continuously endured the pain of the falling gravel landing on his back, but even in the instant he fainted, he continued to use his elbows and knees to support his own body to protect the brave little girl under his back from the falling rocks. Tang Xiaolei walked expressionlessly out from behind the referee. He was completely unable to imagine what would have happened if that attack had landed on his body. Furthermore, although his 3 arrows were very powerful, he could guarantee that there would have only been a single outcome if they had collided with the might of the super energy-gathering soul cannon. That was an explosion. Moreover, his 3 arrows would simply have been unable to pierce through the soul cannon. The referee turned towards him and said indifferently, "You were already eliminated from the competition the moment I helped block your opponent's attack." Tang Xiaolei shivered instinctively, and only then did he realize that he was still in a tournament. He hurriedly said respectfully, "Many thanks for your kindness in saving my life." However, the outcome of this match, at this exact moment, a somewhat limping figure climbed out from a pile of broken rocks and dust. His sturdy body was filled with power, and his appearance seemed to make the entire audience think that this was a theater. This person was Shui Lang. After being frozen by Xiao Xiao's cauldron's quaking tremble, and taking on the shockwaves of the purple flower bow's second arrow, Shui Lang had been slightly injured. However, He Kai-tu and Tang Xiaolei had started firing at each other before waiting for him to climb up. Think about it, one party had shot 3 deadly arrows over, while the other had released a super energy-gathering soul cannon. Nobody else would have dared to climb back up in a situation like this. Shui Lang could only curl his body up and release his strongest defensive soul skill, and exert his soul power, to hug himself amidst those terrifying explosions. Moreover, it was just by doing this that he was able to become the match's last remaining person. After the referee announced the results of this round, the audience fell into a temporary silence. Nobody knew who made the first clap, but sounds of applause started to gradually ring out. These sounds were rather sparse at the very beginning, but they gradually grew louder as more and more people came to their senses. Right, Shrek Academy had lost. The Shrek Academy that had never lost had lost a small match. However, was Shrek Academy's glory affected at all? No, naturally not. In the eyes of the audience, at the very least, Shrek's glory had only grew even more. Although they didn't know why Shrek Academy would send out a Soul Ancestor and a Soul Grandmaster, this team had nearly defeated one consisting of a Soul King and a Soul Ancestor. It was just that a Soul King who specialized in long-range attacks had completely shut them down. Think about it, what had that brave girl done? She was a twin-souled Soul Master who infected every single person in the crowd with her perseverance and stubbornness. Did she lose? No, she hadn't lost. She was still that young, and she had a boundless future. At most, the audience only thought that Shrek Academy was being heartless. None of them thought that Shrek Academy had lost its glory. It was the exact opposite. This fight had proved the miracles that Shrek Academy could create. Right, this was a match of miracles. Everything had been done for Shrek's glory. At the same time, this was glory that belonged to the Tang sect. Other than Shu Sanxia and Jiang Nan Nan, who'd taken part in the first match, the remaining 5 people who went out belonged to both Shrek Academy and the Tang sect. The latter was the sect that had been forgotten by countless people, yet had contributed much to the world of Soul Masters. It was the Tang sect that had tried to desperately fight against a crazy tide, the Tang sect that had been flourishing for a period of time. Bei Bei was the oldest among the 7, as well as the senior brother of the Tang sect. As a result of this, he had to think about things much more than other people. The opportunity to come to this tournament was originally meant to be a form of tempering for the preparatory team to become the main team in the future. However, they were able to fully stimulate their potential after being forced into the heart of the struggle. Bei Bei deeply believed that everyone present would receive unimaginable benefits as long as they were able to clench their teeth and persist. Ordinary learning and cultivation would be completely unable to stimulate their minds and potential in the way that this had. Furthermore, he regarded the title of Shrek's 7 monsters as a very important thing. How could he just receive it without doing anything? The true core of the first generation was Tang San, and the 7 monsters from that generation had all become members of the Tang sect. Since this match had an extraordinary amount of significance to Shrek Academy, how could it not be the same for the Tang sect? We'll definitely succeed. This was the only thought that was in Bei Bei's mind right now. The scene of him meeting Tang Ya for the first time had inexplicably appeared in his mind. The Tang Ya at that time looked so helpless, and her eyes looked so hazy. However, Bei Bei had also seen an unforgettably firm and stubborn look in her eyes. Shrek is still Shrek. Although I don't know why Shrek Academy would send you guys to participate in this tournament, you have used your strength to win our respect. Even if you lose, you will not lose any face for Shrek Academy. I am called Yi Wuqing, and I am the team leader of Just Sky Academy. I'm called Bei Bei, Bei Bei said indifferently. As for victory or defeat, we'll just have to see after the match. Yi Wuqing nodded his head lightly. It's precisely because of the respect we have for you that we will be going all out. You have the glory that belongs to Shrek Academy, and we similarly have the glory that belongs to Just Sky Academy. We will definitely win this match. The corner of Bei Bei's mouth twitched. You speak a lot of nonsense. Yi Wuqing's cold eyes flickered for a bit. He extended his right thumb, then slowly turned it downwards. However, Bei Bei started to laugh. It's always people like you who act like everyone owes you money, so that other people don't actually know that you're trying to pull one out. I'll quickly send you off the stage to save you the trouble of being embarrassed. It's not embarrassing to have constipation, really. Xu Sanxia was a perverted person, but he was far from Bei Bei's level at trash talking, let alone a person like Yi Wuqing, who bitterly cultivated all day long. Yi Wuqing's calm face started to flush red, and the facial muscles of his two teammates twitched as they tried to not laugh. Clearly, they didn't like Yi Wuqing's eternally expressionless face either. The referee interrupted the two parties, who were quibbling with each other before the match. Get back. Prepare for the match. Yi Wuqing pointed his finger at Bei Bei, then moved backwards. Bei Bei muttered to himself, I just hate people who point fingers at me the most. I'll definitely break it later. The referee gave at Shrek Academy's trio a deep look, then took a deep breath and shouted, Match, start. The tens of thousands of people in Star Luo Plaza were all focused on this single thing. The audience had even forgotten how to blink, so scared were they that they would miss a single thing. This match was simply too exciting. They had already forgotten the glory of Shrek Academy. Right now, only the staunch and unyielding Shrek existed in their minds. Over on the city walls, even the Emperor couldn't help but press his hands into his chair as he watched intently. Would a miracle truly occur? According to the investigations he had conducted, Shrek Academy stood no chance of winning this match. However, they had already used their actions to prove that their soul ancestors wouldn't be afraid of any Soul Kings, to the extent that even a two-ring Soul Grandmaster had dared to forcefully clash with a Soul King. Just how valiant was this? Following the declaration of the start of the match, both parties released their respective martial souls. Accompanied by a wave of lightning, dragon scales began to cover half of Bei Bei's body, as he released his tyrannical blue lightning dragon. Hu Yuhao and Wang Dong then released their martial souls while holding hands in a very natural manner. However, the blood-red soul rings didn't appear as per the audience's anticipations. What appeared was actually white, the white that represented a 10-year soul ring. Currently, there were only two simple white soul rings around Hu Yuhao and Wang Dong's bodies. Regardless of whether it was him or Hu Yuhao, they wouldn't be able to take on a powerful opponent by themselves. However, the fact that they were companions with a 100% compatibility rate couldn't be forgotten. The two of them could rival even a soul ancestor if they working together. Neither him nor Hu Yuhao would be able to contend against the enemy before them alone. However, one must never forget that they were companions that possessed a 100% martial soul fusion rate. Their combined might was already enough to match a soul ancestor. Wang Dong stuck to Hu Yuhao's back in a very natural manner. As he held onto the latter's waist, he released his radiant butterfly goddess. From the front, Wang Dong looked as if he had already disappeared. It was as if Hu Yuhao had grown a pair of dazzling wings, whose bluish-golden light radiated throughout the entire arena. Wang Dong's radiant butterfly goddess wasn't the strongest martial soul that had appeared in the tournament, but up till now, there was definitely no other one that could be compared to it in terms of beauty. As the Haodong power circulated through his body, Hu Yuhao took a step forward and reached Bei Bei. After fusing with Wang Dong, he wanted to rely on their combined strength to help his senior brother fight. Senior brother, will fight alongside you. Hu Yuhao's voice was clearly somewhat low. At this moment, a golden light flickered through his eyes, and a few shades of jade green were hidden within them. Okay. Bei Bei shouted, taking the initiative to charge towards his opponents. Wang Dong unfurled his wings, allowing Hu Yuhao to follow his senior brother by flying in a manner that seemed as though he was gliding over the floor. Hu Yuhao's spiritual detection had already enveloped the entire stage. With Yi Wuqing leading the team, the three students from Just Sky Academy released their martial souls. Their martial souls could be said to be somewhat unique, and one had no choice but to admit that Just Sky Academy, which relied on the cultivation of martial souls while rejecting the use of soul tools, was somewhat unique when selecting and nurturing students. Shangguan can shut his eyes, causing a faint layer of mist to diffuse from his body. This mist wasn't white, but faint blue. This faint blue mist coiled about and rose into the air, making his body faintly discernible and filling his person with an aura of mystery. 2 yellow and 2 purple soul rings started to undulate about his body. As he took a few steps back, Shangguan squinted his eyes, gazing at Hu Yuhao's body. Over at the other side, the girl known as Yanga had a martial soul that related to fire, as her name implied. Her current appearance was even more peculiar. At this moment, she was floating in the air, held up by a half-meter wide fireball. Her hands were outstretched from her body, and her arms were slightly bent. She held a palm-sized fireball in each of her hands. There was no doubt about it, her martial soul was a fireball. It wasn't an elemental martial soul like the one Ling Luo Chen possessed, but it was a material elemental martial soul that was slightly inferior to hers. In contrast to them, Yi Wuqing's martial soul wasn't too peculiar. A long and narrow gold leaf had quietly floated in front of him, and his soul rings also surrounded him. He then raised his right hand, using his index and middle fingers to hold this leaf. This was Yi Wuqing's martial soul, the golden leaf. However, he was an assault-type soul master. Yanga was the first person on the battlefield to make a move. As she pressed her hands together, she shouted, "Go!" Immediately, the 2 fireballs in her palms fused together. This fusion didn't look too important, but a foot-wide fireball suddenly flew towards Bei Bei. Following that, Yanga's first soul ring lit up. While Yanga made her move, Shangguan wasn't slacking about either. He gently shook his soul-sucking bell, causing a series of jingles to ring out. Waves of twitchiness flooded Bei Bei, Hu Yuhao, and Wang Dong's minds, and they became absent-minded for an instant. Spiritual interference. The corner of Hu Yuhao's mouth twitched for a moment. Although he didn't know the correct name of his opponent's soul skill, he could guarantee that this was something akin to his spiritual interference. Pipe down a little. Hu Yuhao shouted coldly as he counterattacked, without any traces of politeness at all. A purplish golden light instantly shot out from his eyes, targeting Shangguan's soul-sucking bell. If Hu Yuhao and Wang Dong were truly 2 ringed soul grandmasters, the former's strength in spiritual-type skills wouldn't be too great. Moreover, whatever skill he could release would be weakened by his first white soul ring. This was what Shangguan thought. He was an auxiliary control-type soul master, making him somewhat similar to Xiao Xiao. He was called an auxiliary-type soul master, but he didn't strengthen his teammates, he weakened his opponents. For example, his first soul skill would affect the minds of all opponents within a certain range, and cancel the lock-on effects of any other soul skills. Shangguan could be considered to be quite skillful in its use. What a powerful spiritual-type attack skill. Astonished, Shangguan violently shook the soul-sucking bell in his hand. An ear-piercing jingle brought about a powerful sound wave, causing Hu Yuhao's trio to feel as though their heads were exploding. This was especially true for Hu Yuhao, who had just suffered a backlash after using his spiritual shock. His footsteps slowed down a bit, and he let out a muffled groan. This was the soul-sucking bell's second soul skill, Soul Death. At this exact moment, Yanga's fireball finally reached Bei Bei. Bei Bei raised his right hand, sending a claw-shaped bolt of purplish-blue lightning forward. This bolt of lightning collided with the fireball in mid-air, causing a violent boom to ring out. Bei Bei wasn't stopped at all, but his thunderous dragon claw had been drained by the fireball. The person who'd thrown the throwing knife was Hu Yuhao. Although his spiritual sharing had been affected temporarily, his own spiritual detection still worked. As the user of the skill, his spiritual power was the strongest of the 6 people participating in this match. Because of that, he had still grasped the trajectory of the golden leaf. At the critical moment, Hu Yuhao had used the Tang San's technique of controlling hidden weapons to send a throwing knife to waste the power of the golden leaf. He had already felt that something was off the instant the golden leaf left Yi Wuqing's hands, because he clearly sensed that the golden leaf contained an enormous, yet unstable soul power. This soul power immediately circulated in a peculiar fashion the instant it was thrown out. As a result, it would be strange if this thing was just that simple. After all, this was something released by an expert, who was near the Soul Emperor rank of cultivation. Just Sky Academy was extremely cautious towards Hu Yuhao. After all, he had performed astonishingly well during the previous matches, and a mysterious person was the most terrifying thing in the world. Up till now, nobody had clearly guessed what Hu Yuhao's actual strength was. Hu Yuhao's target was Shangguan, and at this moment, he was just about to reach him. The sound coming from Shangguan's soul-sucking bell suddenly became sharp, as he activated his third soul skill. That piercing toll of the bell made it seem as though there were countless needles that were irritating one's eardrums. It wasn't just unpleasant to hear, but it even gave off an indescribable sense of jitteriness. Soul piercing. This was Shangguan Can's third soul skill. If one's cultivation was far weaker than his, one would feel extremely irritated due to this soul skill. There was even a chance that one would directly fall into a coma. Furthermore, this soul skill covered an extremely large area. The charging Bei was directly affected, and Wang Dong likewise. Only Hui Yuhao acted as if he hadn't heard anything at all. Before he reached Shangguan Can, a somewhat twisted ray of white light had already shot towards the latter like lightning. Yi Wuqing and Yang Er would naturally not just stand idly by while Shangguan Can was being attacked. The aura around Yang Er suddenly changed, and the large fireball she was standing on shot out. The large fireball split into 5 smaller ones in midair, and 2 of them shot towards Hui Yuhao, while the other 3 blocked Bei. Not only that, but she put her palms together in front of her chest, and her third soul ring lit up, causing an enormous purple fireball to congeal in front of her. Instantly, the air within the tournament stage started to heat up as a result of this purple flame. A golden leaf accurately blocked Hui Yuhao's light ray, just like how he had done the same using his throwing knives earlier. Yi Wuqing had made a move. He naturally would not allow his auxiliary type Soul Master to be struck just like that. Soul Land 2 Episode 39 Part 1 will end here.